I got to hand it to you. Those who said that the Packers should play Sean Clifford, they were right all along. Officially, Sean Clifford is now a playoff quarterback. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't see that coming. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews, where I'm your host, John Delray. Today, taking a look back at the magical evening that was for the Green Bay Packers as they completely and utterly dismantled the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round. And now get ready to take on San Francisco in the divisional round of the playoffs. So lots to talk about. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to give the injury update, as Matt LaFleur said in his press conference today, but then also going to be going through the 5 key players that I listed in the game review, reviewing how they did, and then also talking about the keys to victory and whether the Green Bay Packers truly accomplished them or not. So first up, let's get to that injury report. And I'm going to say this first. Heart goes out to any player who works all season long, gets to the playoffs, and then suffers some kind of catastrophic season-ending injury, and that does happen to be the case for Kingsley or JJ Anagbare. Matt LaFleur confirmed in his press conference today that it is indeed a torn ACL for the backup edge rusher for the Green Bay Packers. He's out for the course this playoff run, and just as ACL injuries go, you'd have to think that given how late this one has occurred, we may be missing him for a chunk of next year as well. Other injuries to keep an eye on, guys who were hurt during the game or aggravated certain injuries going on. Jair Alexander, hoping that ankle is all better. Quay Walker, Isaiah McDuffie. Matt LaFleur did not exactly expand on any one of them in his press conference, but still something we're going to be taking note of all week long. Let's talk just for a brief second about the Kingsley Anagbare injury. How did the Packers compensate for that? Because was he a starter? No. Guy was still playing a good amount of snaps, really kind of impossible to tell who was edge 3 with him versus LVN. They were used in different ways. So this is a loss for the Packers defense. Of course, it's not the equivalency of losing like a Preston Smith or a Sean Gary. Still important. So how are the Packers going to compensate for that? Well, one, I think you do have more Lucas Van Ness on the field. Per PFF's tracking, he did get 5 sacks this year, got an additional 1 in the game against Dallas and Dak Prescott. So I think he starts playing more right off the bat. Also, I wouldn't plan on Brenton Cox Jr. being a healthy scratch anymore like he was against Dallas last night. I think we're going to see some playing time now for Brenton Cox Jr. But there's also 2 other things that the Packers can do. They can elevate Keyshawn Banks, who's on their practice squad. He's an edge rusher. Could get him up and perhaps giving him some, at the very least, special teams snaps, because I think Barry was a member of special teams as well. Or perhaps, assuming health for both Walker and McDuffie, maybe the Packers opt in their base 3-4 to get Campbell, McDuffie, and Quay on the field at the same time and have Quay do some outside linebacker stuff like we saw him do at times last year in his rookie season. So few options here for Green Bay to really replace those Anagbare snaps. Going to be interesting to see exactly how they decide to cover it getting ready for San Francisco. All right. So let's take a look back. Let's dive into the magical night that was for Packers versus Cowboys. And the first player that I'm going to talk about isn't actually one of the key 5 players that I listed in the game preview, because what's astonishing is it's just kind of assumed at this point, and that's what's so silly. Like, Jordan Love has elevated his game to this place of being like a franchise quarterback, in that like every week you just, roughly what you're going to get, every single week, 250, couple touchdowns, no turnovers, maybe 1 if something goes haywire, and then a few highlights that you'll be able to tell your grandkids about. It's just become standard for Jordan Love. And how the hell did we get here in such a short amount of time, right? I've always supported Jordan Love, but like things in October looked very much like a work in progress, even for Love, for the entire offense, of course. But even for Love, things were work in progress, and you saw the flashes of what he could be. But the fact that he's already being what he could be is shocking. Last night, he turned in another great performance, going for 272, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, and a QB rating of 157.2. Keep in mind, a perfect quarterback rating is 158.3. It's the highest playoff rating playoff quarterback rating for any performance ever with at least 20 attempts, not just in Packer history, in NFL history. For any quarterback who's thrown more than 20 times in a game, that is now the highest quarterback rating ever. Just mind-bogglingly good. And the thing is, and I've been finding this for a couple weeks, there's just, what more do you say? He's throwing from any arm angle. His decision's decisive. He's throwing, doesn't matter if he's stepping into a throw or if he's falling back and doing what John Madden coined as Farvian throws off of his back foot. It just doesn't seem to matter who he's even throwing to. Jordan Love is just finding a way. If he were to take how he's played in the back half of the season, or even just over the last 8 weeks, and take that and expand it over an entire season, you're looking pretty absolutely at an MVP season. And if you do it for an entire stretch in the postseason, you're looking at an eventual Super Bowl champion. And dare I say, maybe a little bit sooner than we all thought possible. He deserves all the accolades he's getting. The national conversation is finally catching up to what we've all known for a long time. Packers are real. They're legit. And Jordan Love is absolutely the leader. Speaking of leaders, let's take a look at our 5 actual players from the game preview. Number 1 being Aaron Jones. We knew his rushing success was going to be key in this game. Any team that had run for over 130 yards against Dallas wound up beating Dallas. Well, Aaron Jones, the offensive line, they did work. Aaron Jones totaling 118 yards on the ground all by himself, 5.6 yards per carry, and 3 more touchdowns in Dallas. What's more is, did you see the clip that's been going around all day of Jaden Reed and Aaron Jones talking on the sideline? This is perhaps what Aaron Jones means most to Green Bay. Field Yates captured it word for word in a tweet. And here's what Jaden Reed said to Aaron Jones. "You're the reason I go hard, bro. You're somebody to look up to, bro. You're somebody to play for. I want to go out there and block for you. I feel effed up when I don't make the block." And then Field goes on to say, "That tells you everything you need to know about how much Jones means to the Packers. And it goes way beyond just rushing yards and touchdowns. That's awesome." And it's totally true. Aaron Jones is a leader of the Packers, no doubt about it. Perhaps maybe the largest voice in the locker room, or the one that means the most. He is their veteran leadership now. And I think you can say this, and I don't mean to get swept up in the joy that is this one game. I think you can say pretty unequivocally, next year, Aaron Jones isn't going anywhere. And he never really was. I think he's going to be sticking as a Packer. Number 2, Rashawn Gary. Honestly, this is like one of the only ones on the list that didn't have a great statistical day. 27 pass rush snaps that resulted in only 2 pressures, one being a quarterback hit, the other being a hurry for Rashawn himself. But luckily, the rest of the defense picked up the slack. Dak Prescott dropped back. And absolutely absurd. He dropped back 70 times in this game. The Packers garnered 18 pressures, including 4 sacks and 5 hits on those 70 dropbacks. Kenny Clark especially, he was one guy who actually had a better game than the box score is going to indicate. He was credited with only 1 pressure, but going back and watching, I mean, he certainly pushed interior pockets quite a bit. But there also were highlight plays by Kobe Wooden, Enigbare, Wyatt. And this wasn't an otherworldly performance by the front. We have been talking about how for the secondary to really be put in a good spot, the front has to perform on an otherworldly level. Not against Dallas. I mean, the front did fine. They certainly brought down Dak a few times, but 18 pressures on 70 dropbacks isn't a lot. And the secondary did its own work. They did great. There's really not a way to say it other than that. So luckily, the front was strong enough. Secondary played better than we've seen in recent weeks. Overall, the defense was a very, very convincing package out there. And Rashawn Gary, the fact that they were able to do it while Rashawn Gary didn't exactly have the biggest statistical day is promising. Number 3, Rasheed Walker. The highest graded Packer offensive lineman with a grade of 88.3 in pass blocking. 21 pass blocking snaps, 0 pressures allowed. Multiple of those snaps were against Parsons, Dexter Lawrence. It just didn't matter. Rasheed Walker and the entire Packers offensive line was clearing holes for Jones, protecting Love, making sure that the offense could actually fully function in its biggest form. With the most weaponry we've had all season long. It all worked. Highest graded offensive lineman overall just happened to be budding superstar Zach Tom at right tackle, 83.9 overall. Run blocking grade, specifically 91.4. One little thing that I just wanted to add about the offensive line, too, outside of Tom and Walker, Sean Ryan outsnapped John Runyon Jr. And I know it's a little complicated because, starters are pulled, etc. But that rotation's still going in strong on passing plays, which has been kind of rare. Sean Ryan outsnapped John Runyon Jr. 12-10. So that rotation's still going in full force. Something to keep an eye on for sure. Next up, Keyshawn Nixon. I said Nixon's going to have a strong game. CeeDee Lamb plays in the slot more often than he doesn't. Well, who's the slot corner? Keyshawn Nixon. And Dak overall did finish 41 of 60 for 403 yards, with much of that being in garbage time. So let's, you don't want to totally discount stats. And yeah, there were a couple drops by the Cowboys, which would have cost the Packers if they would have actually been caught. But overall, a lot of Dak's stats did come in the fourth quarter when the Packers had really backed things off. And I'll admit that too. That is at the fault of Joe Barry and Matt LaFleur. LaFleur acknowledged in the press conference following the game that he shouldn't have pulled starters as early as he did. I have a feeling once we hear from Joe Barry, he's going to say we shouldn't have gone soft zone as early as we did. We know, learn from it, adapt for next week. But ultimately, for 3 quarters of this game, the secondary was playing great, and Keyshawn Nixon was a very big part of that. Having one of the best games of the season for him, Nixon gave up a quarterback rating of only 77 while also racking up 8 tackles. Both Carrington Valentine and Jair limited their quarterback ratings to both being in the 50s. Darnell Savage, he added the pick 6. Jair had his pick. And specifically, Darnell's pick 6 really did begin to put the game away. But special shout-outs are really due for the secondary, just for sheer endurance. The amount that these guys ran, 70 dropbacks for Dak. 60 pass attempts. I mean, these are insanely high numbers. Just to give you an idea, most games have for an offense between 55 and 65 plays. So to even have 60 dropbacks alone, 60 pass attempts, 70 dropbacks, that's just pure lunacy. And what's equally as insane is the snap counts of some of these Packers. Carrington Valentine, 7th round rookie, playing in his first career playoff game. Dude played 90 snaps. 90. That's a lot of running. Beyond that, and it wasn't just him, Jonathan Owens, Keyshawn Nixon, they both had 89. Darnell Savage, 79. Devondre Campbell, 75. And just as a slight aside here, I will say that Matt LaFleur said in his press conference earlier today that the Packers may have a slightly lighter week at practice this week. Partially because the San Francisco game is a day earlier, if it's only a 6-day week for the Packers now. And I got to believe, too, that maybe some of these freakishly high snap counts on defense, you got to give guys a little bit of rest. But still, wildly impressive stuff from the Packers secondary. I'm going to say this, too. Don't be angry. Joe Barry, over the last 3 weeks, is giving reason not just for hope, but perhaps some security for him. It may be happening before our very eyes, y'all. Last player. That would be Dontavian Wicks. You know what? If you're someone who does player bets, playoff fantasy, anything of that sort, good freaking luck to you guessing which Packers wide receiver to use, because this looked like a very Wicks week. I talked about how Wicks is very good against man coverage. He's also good in contested catches, etc., etc. Okay, enter Romeo Doubs. 8 days ago, the dude was coughing up blood. Last night, he joins Devontae Adams as only the second Packer wide receiver in playoff history to get over 150 yards receiving in a game. His full stat line in its full context is absolutely bonkers. Just listen to this. 6 targets. 6 catches. Perfect efficiency. But he turned those 6 catches into 151 yards receiving, resulting in 25.2 yards per catch. But you know what? Do you realize he got those numbers while only running 16 routes? 16 routes. 25.2 yards per catch is insane. But if he only did 16 routes, that means he got 9 yards per route run. It's lunacy. It's comical. It's insane. Sometimes you just come across a stat that just makes you go, wow. And that is exactly the case with Romeo Doubs. Let's discuss just a few other key numbers here. Things that I talked about in the preview. We knew turnovers would be important, right? Packers won that battle 2-0. We knew penalties could come into play in this game, especially with the reffing crew being the second most penalizing reffing crew in the league. And they did kind of live up to that billing. They threw 13 flags in this game. But, I mean, ultimately, did the Packers win this battle? No, but they did get key penalties from the Cowboys when they needed them. Packers ultimately at 7 for 66, Cowboys 6 for 48. But here's the number that truly matters the most. The Green Bay Packers are the first 7 seed in NFL history to advance to the second round. And I know what you're thinking. You're automatically thinking, well, come on, it's not that impressive. They were introduced in like 2020. Like, come on. In the annals of history books that the NFL keeps, it still is going to say that the Green Bay Packers were the very first team to ever do it. And this team gets to keep going while also being the youngest team in the playoffs in like a half century. It's impressive no matter what way you spin it or no matter how you try to discount it. It still is impressive. Let's take just a final look at just 2 quick keys, right? 2 keys that the Packers must have accomplished in order to win the game. And yes, by George, they did it. Number 1 was the Green Bay Packers must stay ahead of the sticks. They did. Aaron Jones is obviously a huge part of that, but also so was a lot of the early down passing and the decisions that was performed by Jordan Love and company. And it's not exactly about early downs, but I still wanted you to take a look at this. This is a breakdown for Jordan Love and I know it's kind of tiny up there, but this is a breakdown of Jordan Love when he's throwing against pressure, play action, etc. I'm going to rattle through this really quick. When he was kept clean, which was 67% of his dropbacks, he was 11 of 14 for 120 yards, 1 touchdown. When he was under pressure, generally speaking, in the course of the season, Jordan Love, when he was under pressure, had a completion percentage 20% lower than when he was kept clean. In this game, not the case. He was 5 of 7 for 71% completion, 152 yards, 2 touchdowns. When he was blitzed, he was 6 of 8 for 129 and 2. When he was not blitzed, he was 10 of 13 for 143 and 1. But let's look at how exactly even that was done. Play action was called on 8 dropbacks. He was 6 of 8, 107-2. No play action, 10 of 13, 76.9 completion percentage, 165-1. Screens, he was 2 of 3 on screens for 18 yards. And then no screens, 14 of 18, 77.8% completion percentage, 254 yards. And 3 touchdowns. It is a very, very strong and a variety performance for Jordan Love and company. And then number 2, the Packers must play assignment sure and not allow Tony Pollard to do to them what they're hoping Aaron Jones does to the Cowboys. And the early lead definitely helped ensure this. I loved the decision for Green Bay to get the ball first. It was the right call, especially going against Dallas. Tony Pollard overall was held to only 15 carries for 56 yards. And in terms of staying assignment sure, yeah, there were a few instances of pass rushers blazing right past Dak. But ultimately, they still did enough to create a very bad day for Dak. And when it comes down to time of possession, again, it gets a little wishy-washy here because of the fourth quarter and the Cowboys just kind of doing what they wanted in garbage time. But still, Cowboys 31-05, Packers 28-55. In terms of time of possession. I could not find any type of breakdown of like before the fourth, what that would have been. So yeah, bear with me on the whole game one than that. But look, credit due all the way around. I talked about how Matt LaFleur deserves credit last week just for getting this team to the playoffs. But beyond that, I talked in the game preview about Joe Barry in elimination games and why all of a sudden he's so good in elimination games. Did it again. Yeah, San Francisco is an entirely different animal. Like, it's going to be a different test. We're going to talk about that later this week. They're tough, no doubt about it. Class of the NFC, as Matt LaFleur said today. But getting to the playoffs, and then this performance, yeah, the Packers did match up well against the Cowboys. I didn't think it would be that successful. Very few who did. I know Miserable Goat was one of them. But look, we really got to relish this. We have to enjoy this time, yes, of course the Packers want to win. But how rare is it for the Packers to make the playoffs when no one expected them to? After 15, 18, whatever years of just the Packers are going to make it. We'll just see how far they go. This is a different experience. It is a very enjoyable one. And the people who helped get them here do deserve a lot of credit. That would be Matt LaFleur, Adam Stenovich, Jason Vrabel, the passing game coordinator for the offense. And defensively, yeah, even that guy, Joe Barry. His last 3 games, his defense has been pretty lights out. So one programming note for you very quick. On Wednesday, going to have to do a slightly different timed Q&A. Can't be at 4:30 Central on Wednesday. I got a doctor's appointment. So we're going to do that earlier in the day. Be on the lookout for a notice. I'll be putting that out on Tuesday of this week, just notifying you what time that live Q&A will be on Wednesday. It's probably going to be something like noon, but I'll figure out the exact details and let you know. And then on Friday, game preview for Packers versus Niners, the divisional round. Thanks so much for joining me here on Lombardi Time Brews. I do hope you are enjoying this win. I do hope you are having an absolutely fantastic week. And as always, go Pack, go.